Question 12 says that in Cherokee County, the fine for speeding is $17 for each mile per hour the driver is traveling over the posted speed limit. In Cherokee County, Kirk was fined $221 for speeding on a road with a posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. Kirk was fined for traveling at what speed in miles per hour? And one thing about these answers right off the bat, noticing that the number 17 is in the prompt as well as in the answer choice. Also, there seems to be like a difference of 30 between F and H, and also in between G and J. And that number 30 also appears in the prompt. As far as ACT math concepts, nothing really jumps out after reading this question other than just that it's a word problem. That being said, one thing that does stand out to me in reading this question is that the way that it's worded and the way that the answers are presented here, this would be a relatively easy question to just test out the answers for, because they're asking us for how quickly he's traveling, and they're giving us 5 different options. So those are easy to just check out and plug back into the question. There's also a formal way of doing this, so we'll do that as well. I'm just going to write out here the different approaches that we'll look at. So one is concrete, testing answers, and then the second one is the more formal math way. Okay, so let's try out the testing answers approach first. So in trying out the answer choices, I like to start out with the middle answer, although you can start out with whatever one you like, but I like the middle answer because if it is correct, then I am done. But if it turns out to be too large in the context of the question, then I'll have a couple answers that are smaller that I can try. And on the other hand, if it turns out to be too small, then I'll have a couple answers that are larger that I can try. So we'll basically just assume, using this technique, that 43 is the correct answer, and we'll plug that back into the question to check if it works out. So we'll say that Kirk was fined for traveling at 43 miles per hour, and plugging that back into the question, we know that the speed limit was 30 miles per hour. So if he's going 43 miles per hour and the speed limit is 30 miles per hour, then we can take the difference, just subtract those two, to find out how much he was speeding. So 13 miles per hour is how much he's speeding. And then from there, continuing to kind of plug this into the question, we know that he was fined for, or the fine for speeding is $17 for each mile per hour over the speed limit. So to get the amount that he's going to be fined for 13 miles per hour, we'll do 13 times 17. And then just pull up my calculator here. So I'll do 13 times 17, and that is 221. So this will be the amount that he is charged. And as it turns out, we see that he was, in fact, fined $221. So this works in the context of the question. So this is going to be correct. So as it turns out, we got a little bit lucky there. Our first answer we tried worked out. That being said, if you sort of look at these other answers, like before 43, the 13 and the 17, even if we were to sort of think about trying those out, it really wouldn't even make sense in this context, because we know that speed limit is 30 miles per hour, and F and G would say that he's actually going beneath the speed limit. And the question just tells us that he's fined for speeding, for going over the speed limit. So really 13 and 17 don't even make sense in this context, and we could kind of discard those. So now that we've looked at the more concrete way of solving this question, let's take a look at a formal way of solving it. And that would basically involve just trying to figure out the amount that he was speeding over the speed limit. And we can do that by just focusing on the amount that he was fined, which is $221, and then dividing that by the fine per mile an hour that's charged. So if we take the total fine, which is $221, and we divide that by the fine per mile per hour, we should get the number of miles per hour that he was speeding. So if we do 221 divided by 17, we get 13. So this tells us that he was going basically 13 miles per hour over the speed limit. And since the speed limit is 30 miles per hour, we can add that to the 30, and that will tell us the speed that he was going. So it's 43, and that is the same answer that we got earlier. Now let's take a look at the wrong answers. For answer choice F, we can sort of see why that's there. After doing it the formal way, that's basically the amount over the speed limit that he's going, but it's not the actual total speed that he was traveling. So this is a sort of tricky answer that somebody might get if they forget what the question's asking. For G, that seems to be there if somebody might have done it a formal way and kind of just got mixed up here in the calculation, and instead of going with the 13 and adding it to the 30, they got distracted or something by the 17 and went with that. We saw that 43 was correct. For 47, that seems to be if instead of adding the 13 to the 30 to get the 43, somebody thought that he was speeding 17 miles per hour over and then added that to the 30 to get 47. So sort of mixing up the numbers here again. And then as far as 60 goes, I'm not really sure how somebody might get that, but it just seems to be adding this number 13 onto that 47 that we saw in J. As far as takeaways from this question, one thing is just to notice what we ultimately needed to know here mathematically. Really was just a matter of arithmetic. In either approach that we took, we just had to divide or multiply or add or subtract to get the answer. So no super advanced math. And another big thing to take away from this is, again, just to notice that the structure of the question, the way it's worded, the way the answers are presented, allows us to plug in the answers, which you don't have to do that, of course. The formal way is fine, but at the very least, it serves as a great way to double check and any other way that you decide to do it. So if you do decide to do it a formal way, and let's say you get 43, then you can really quickly just sort of plug that back into the question, test out that it works, and at that point you can be pretty much 100% sure that you did it correctly because you've basically solved it in two different ways. And that's sort of what we want to shoot for when we're doing these questions, since they're so detail oriented. So with all that said, let's go on to question number 13.